Never ignore a wolf that chooses to beg instead of bite, because the one lowering its head tonight may be wearing a crown before sunrise. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you believe that kindness is power, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us love redeems the broken. Now, back to Evelyn. The first snow of the season had buried the northern forest in a silence so complete that it seemed the world itself had forgotten how to breathe. Pine branches sagged beneath layers of white. Thin streams lay frozen beneath sheets of crystal ice. Even the wind, usually fierce enough to rattle every window in the valley, moved softly through the trees like a weary traveler too exhausted to continue its journey. Deep inside those endless woods stood a tiny wooden cabin no map bothered to mark. Its roof was uneven, patched with old cedar shingles darkened by years of storms. Smoke drifted lazily from the crooked chimney, carrying the comforting scent of burning oak into the bitter winter air. Warm amber light spilled from two small windows, glowing like lonely stars against the endless sea of snow. Inside lived Evelyn Carter. She was 19. Her pale skin reflected the firelight with a quiet softness, while loose waves of chestnut hair rested over the shoulders of a simple wool dress that had been mended more times than anyone could count. Her blue eyes carried an unusual calm, though anyone who looked closely would notice the sadness hidden beneath them, a sadness that had learned to survive without asking for comfort. Years ago, she had belonged to the Silver Ridge Pack. Years ago, she had believed there would be a place waiting for her beneath the moon goddess. Years ago. Now those memories felt as distant as spring. The villagers who occasionally passed through the forest called her many things. The forgotten Omega. The cursed girl. The wolfless one. Some claimed she had been abandoned because her wolf had never awakened. Others whispered that the moon goddess herself had rejected her before birth. Children were warned never to wander near her cabin after sunset, lest misfortune cling to them as easily as snow upon their boots. Evelyn had stopped correcting anyone long ago. People often found comfort in believing cruel stories. Truth required far more courage. She laid another log onto the fireplace and watched orange flames curl around the dry wood. Heat slowly filled the tiny room, chasing away the cold that forever crept through the cabin's aging walls. A battered iron kettle began to whistle softly. She poured steaming herbal tea into a clay cup before carrying it toward the narrow window overlooking the forest. Nothing. Only snow. Only trees. Only another evening exactly like the hundreds before it. She smiled anyway. Loneliness had become something familiar. It no longer felt like an enemy. It simply sat beside her every evening, silent and patient, asking for nothing. Outside, the daylight disappeared sooner than expected. Dark clouds swallowed the last traces of sunset. Within minutes, snow began falling again. Not gently this time. The wind arrived first. Then came the storm. It roared through the forest with frightening strength, bending ancient pines until they groaned like old ships caught beneath crashing waves. Powdered snow slammed against the cabin walls, covering footprints almost as quickly as they appeared. Evelyn secured the wooden shutters before checking the small barn beside the cabin one final time. The old goat had enough hay. The chickens were safely inside. The firewood pile would survive another week if she remained careful. Satisfied, she returned indoors and barred the heavy oak door. The cabin grew quiet once more. Only the fire crackled. Only the storm howled. She settled into the worn rocking chair her grandmother had built decades earlier, pulling a faded blanket around herself as she opened a weathered leather-bound book whose pages smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. She had barely read 2 lines. Knock. The sound was so faint she wondered whether the wind had played another trick. She looked toward the door. Silence. Then, knock. This time it came again. Slower. Heavier. Not the sharp tapping of a traveler. Not the scratching of tree branches. Something else. Her heartbeat quickened. No one came this deep into the northern forest during a blizzard. No one. She carefully set the book aside. The poker from the fireplace felt reassuringly heavy in her trembling hand. One cautious step. Then another. The knocking stopped. Only the storm remained. She rested her fingers on the frozen iron latch. For one long breath, she considered pretending no one or nothing was outside. But compassion had always spoken louder than fear. She slowly pulled the door open. A blast of icy wind exploded into the cabin. Snow swirled across the wooden floor. And beyond the doorway, 6 enormous wolves stood silently beneath the falling snow. None of them growled. None bared their teeth. The largest among them, a magnificent white wolf with silver eyes unlike anything she had ever seen, lowered his head, not in surrender, but as though he were asking a lonely Omega for permission to come home. If this story touches your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more unforgettable tales where kindness changes destiny. Evelyn forgot to breathe. The winter wind rushed past her, carrying needles of ice into the cabin, but the cold barely reached her skin. Every instinct buried deep inside, and Omega screamed the same warning. Run. Lock the door. Do not look into their eyes. 6 wolves stood silently beyond the threshold. They were enormous, far larger than ordinary wolves that roamed the northern forests. Their thick coats were buried beneath fresh snow, their powerful bodies trembling ever so slightly beneath the weight of exhaustion. Frost clung to their whiskers. Their breathing came in slow, uneven clouds that dissolved into the frozen night. The largest one stood at the front. His white fur shimmered beneath the moonlight like polished silver, though patches of crimson stained his shoulder where blood had frozen into jagged crystals. His piercing silver eyes met hers without hostility. There was no hunger in them. No rage. Only unbearable fatigue. Evelyn tightened her grip on the iron poker. She had heard enough stories growing up. Hungry wolves lured travelers into lowering their guard. Once inside, nothing remained except scattered bones beneath the snow. The storm roared louder, shaking the cabin walls. One of the smaller wolves staggered. Its front legs buckled beneath its own weight before it caught itself again, breathing painfully through half-frozen lungs. Another lowered its head until its nose nearly touched the snow, too weak to stand proudly. Evelyn's heart twisted. They're dying, she whispered. The white wolf never moved. Instead, something happened that made every tale she had ever been told suddenly seem meaningless. Very slowly, he lowered himself onto one knee. Not like an animal. Like a knight kneeling before a queen. The remaining 5 wolves followed him. One after another. 6 mighty predators bowed their heads before the lonely Omega no one else wanted. Her fingers loosened around the poker. That can't be possible. The wind howled between the trees, carrying swirling snow across the clearing until the wolves almost disappeared inside a veil of white. If she closed the door now, by morning they would almost certainly be frozen where they stood. She knew she should protect herself. No sane person would willingly invite 6 wolves into a tiny cabin. No Omega living alone would survive if even one of them turned violent. But then she remembered another winter. She had been 16. The night the Silver Ridge pack cast her out. She had wandered through the forest alone, soaked by freezing rain, praying anyone would open a door before the cold claimed her life. No one had. Not a single alpha. Not a single beta. Not even another Omega. She had survived because an elderly trapper found her collapsed beneath an old cedar tree 3 days later. He had asked only one question. Child, are you hungry? He never asked who she was. Never asked why she had been abandoned. Never asked whether helping her might bring him trouble. He simply chose kindness. The memory warmed something inside her chest that years of loneliness had failed to extinguish. She looked back at the wolves. They're frightened, she murmured. No, she corrected herself. They're trying not to frighten me. There was a difference. A very important difference. The white wolf remained perfectly still, his silver eyes never leaving hers. His breathing had grown noticeably heavier now, and she could see frost gathering around the edges of his muzzle. Even standing seemed to cost him tremendous effort. Evelyn slowly lowered the poker until its tip rested harmlessly against the wooden floor. If you wanted me dead, she whispered, you wouldn't have asked. For the first time, the great wolf blinked. A slow, almost grateful blink. The gesture was so strangely human that it sent goosebumps racing across her arms. She stepped aside from the doorway. The warm glow of the fireplace spilled onto the snow. "You may come inside." None of the wolves moved immediately. Instead, they all looked toward the white wolf, waiting, as though only one among them possessed the authority to decide. The white wolf glanced briefly at each of them before giving the smallest nod. Only then did the others begin walking. Not rushing, not scrambling. Each one entered the cabin quietly, careful not to brush against Evelyn despite their immense size. Snow melted beneath their paws, leaving wet tracks across the wooden floor. One limped badly. Another shivered so violently its teeth clicked together. The last to enter was the white wolf. As he crossed the threshold, a powerful gust slammed the cabin door shut behind him. The fire suddenly flared brighter. For one impossible heartbeat, Evelyn thought she saw faint silver markings shimmer beneath the wolf's snow-covered fur before disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage. Inside the tiny cabin, 6 mysterious wolves surrounded the fire without making a sound. None of them realized that before dawn, the secret they had guarded for years would no longer belong to them alone. The cabin suddenly felt much smaller. Not because 6 wolves now occupied the single room. Because silence itself had become a living thing. The fire crackled softly, throwing warm amber light across rough wooden walls. Melted snow dripped from thick coats onto the floorboards, filling the room with the scent of wet fur, frozen earth, pine resin, and fresh blood. Outside, the blizzard continued its relentless assault against the cabin, but inside, only slow breathing disturbed the quiet. Evelyn closed the door carefully and slid the heavy wooden bar back into place. No turning back now. She stood for a long moment with her back against the door, studying each of the enormous creatures. None of them looked at the fireplace first. None searched for food. Instead, every pair of eyes followed the white wolf, as though waiting for his permission. Again, her heartbeat quickened. That wasn't how wild wolves behaved. The white wolf remained standing nearest the entrance, despite being the most severely wounded. His broad shoulders rose and fell with controlled breaths, yet tiny tremors betrayed the effort it took simply to remain upright. Dark blood had soaked through the thick white fur covering his left shoulder. Not fresh blood. Old blood. Half frozen. The wound had been exposed to the storm for hours. Perhaps longer. "You should lie down," Evelyn whispered before she realized she had spoken aloud. The wolf slowly turned his head toward her. Those silver eyes held hers. Calm. Intelligent. Almost. Understanding. Without warning, another wolf stumbled. A dark gray one collapsed beside the fireplace with a muffled thud that shook the floor beneath Evelyn's feet. His breathing became ragged. Every inhale sounded painful. "Oh." She hurried toward him instinctively before stopping halfway. Her grandmother's voice echoed inside her memory. Never approach an injured predator from behind. Fear makes even gentle creatures dangerous. Evelyn lowered herself onto one knee several feet away. "It's all right," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The gray wolf didn't growl. Instead, he lowered his head until his nose rested against the wooden floor. Permission. Or surrender. She couldn't tell which. Slowly, very slowly, Evelyn reached out one trembling hand. Her fingertips brushed thick winter fur. Warm. Despite the freezing storm outside, the wolf's body radiated astonishing heat beneath his soaked coat. Yet beneath that warmth, she felt violent shivers rippling through powerful muscles struggling against exhaustion. "So cold," she murmured. "No, not cold. Fighting the cold." She rose immediately. "I'll need more blankets." She moved quickly around the tiny cabin, gathering every wool blanket she owned. One by one, she draped them over the weakest wolves, careful not to startle them. The gray wolf. A black wolf whose ears were torn. A younger, silver-coated wolf with a deep gash running along his flank. Each accepted her care without resistance. Only the white wolf remained standing. Watching. Always watching. Evelyn disappeared into the adjoining storage room and returned carrying a wooden box worn smooth with age. Inside lay dried mountain herbs, strips of clean linen, jars of pine resin salve, needles carved from polished bone, and tiny glass bottles filled with oils her grandmother had taught her to make. She knelt beside the fire. "This might sting," she whispered, almost laughing at herself. "I'm apologizing to wolves." Carefully she prepared a thick herbal paste, crushing winter sage, frost thyme, and cedar leaves inside a stone mortar until the room filled with their sharp, earthy fragrance. Steam rose as she mixed the herbs with hot water. The familiar work steadied her breathing. Healing had always been easier than speaking. People often misunderstood words. Pain never misunderstood kindness. She carried the bowl toward the gray wolf. He remained perfectly still while she gently parted the fur around an ugly bite wound near his ribs. The flesh beneath looked angry and swollen. Not from ordinary teeth. The edges were strangely blackened, as though burned by something colder than ice. Evelyn frowned. "I've never seen an infection like this." As she cleaned the wound with warm water, the wolf never flinched. Not once. Most wounded animals snapped from fear alone. This one endured everything in complete silence. She wrapped fresh linen around his ribs before tying it securely. There. A faint exhale escaped the wolf. Almost relieved. One by one she moved to the others. Each carried terrible injuries. Arrow wounds. Deep claw marks. Bruises that suggested crushing blows from unimaginable strength. Whoever, or whatever, had attacked them had shown no mercy. Finally, only one remained untreated. The white wolf. He had never moved from the doorway. He watched her tending every member of his strange pack before himself. Only when the last bandage had been tied did he slowly step forward. The room seemed to grow smaller with every silent stride. He stopped directly before her, close enough that she could see individual snowflakes melting across his magnificent coat, close enough to smell winter pine smoke, and faint traces of iron beneath the scent of blood. Evelyn lifted her eyes. The silver wolf lowered his massive head, not in command, not in pride, but in complete trust. With gentle fingers, she reached toward the blood-soaked fur covering his shoulder. The instant her hand touched him, a strange warmth pulsed beneath his skin. For the briefest heartbeat, a brilliant silver symbol flickered beneath his white fur, like an ancient crest awakening from a forgotten dream. Then it vanished. The white wolf closed his eyes. And for the first time that night, he allowed someone else to carry a part of his pain. The strange silver mark disappeared so quickly that Evelyn wondered if exhaustion had tricked her eyes. She blinked once. Nothing remained beneath the white wolf's fur except blood, melted snow, and the slow rise and fall of his breathing. "You've lost too much blood," she whispered. The great wolf opened his eyes again. Those silver irises were unlike anything she had ever seen. They reflected the dancing firelight almost like polished steel, yet somewhere beneath their cold brilliance rested a quiet weariness that tugged painfully at her heart. Evelyn dipped a clean cloth into warm water. "I'm going to clean the wound." She expected resistance. Instead, the white wolf lowered himself onto the floor beside the fireplace with remarkable control. Despite his immense size, every movement remained graceful, almost disciplined. He positioned his injured shoulder toward her as though deliberately making her work easier. Again, not like an animal, like someone accustomed to giving silent commands. The thought sent a chill through her. Carefully, she parted the thick white fur surrounding the wound. The injury was deeper than she had imagined. An arrow had pierced clean through the shoulder before being broken off. Torn flesh surrounded the opening, while dark veins spread beneath the skin in delicate branches that resembled frozen rivers. Evelyn frowned. "I don't understand." She had treated hunters before. Woodcutters. Travelers attacked by wolves. Even bears. None of their wounds had ever looked like this. The flesh around the injury wasn't merely infected. It shimmered faintly beneath the firelight as if tiny crystals of ice had become trapped beneath the skin itself. She reached for the herbal paste. The moment it touched the wound, the white wolf's muscles became rigid. Not from anger. From pain. A low breath escaped him, not quite a growl, not quite a sigh. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered immediately. So sorry. She continued working with gentle hands, cleaning away dried blood before applying more of the warm herbs. Gradually, the rigid muscles beneath her fingertips relaxed. The white wolf never once pulled away. He simply watched her. His breathing slowly matched hers. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. For reasons she couldn't explain, the rhythm calmed both of them. Outside, the blizzard grew even fiercer. The cabin groaned beneath powerful gusts that rattled every wooden beam. Snow slammed against the windows until nothing beyond the glass remained visible. It felt as though the world itself had disappeared. Only the tiny cabin remained. Only the fire. Only 7 lonely souls trapped together against the storm. When she finished dressing the white wolf's shoulder, Evelyn sat back with a tired smile. There. You should all rest now. Almost as if they understood her words, several wolves slowly lowered themselves beside the fire. The gray wolf curled near the hearth. The youngest silver wolf stretched out beside the wooden table. The black wolf rested close to the entrance, facing the door as though standing watch even while lying down. Evelyn noticed something curious. None of them chose their places at random. Every position seemed deliberate. The entrance. The windows. The fireplace. Her own rocking chair. Without speaking, they had formed a protective circle around her. She laughed softly to herself. What am I thinking? They're probably just trying to stay warm. Still, the strange feeling refused to leave. She hung the damp cloths near the fire before stirring a pot of vegetable stew that had simmered quietly all evening. The rich aroma of onions, carrots, herbs, and mushrooms filled the cabin. Her stomach growled. Only then did she realize she had forgotten to eat. She found an old wooden bowl and carried it toward the wolves. I suppose wolves don't eat stew. The younger silver wolf lifted his head. His ears twitched. Then, to Evelyn's complete surprise, he gently nudged the bowl back toward her with his nose. She stared. You want me to eat first? The wolf blinked once. Across the room, the others remained perfectly still. Watching. Waiting. Even the white wolf kept his gaze fixed upon her. Evelyn smiled despite herself. You're very strange wolves. She finally sat near the fireplace and slowly ate while the wolves remained where they were. Not one attempted to steal the food. Not one begged. Not one even sniffed toward the bowl. Only after she finished did the white wolf quietly rise. He walked toward the cabin door. Every other wolf immediately stood. Again. Waiting for him. The white wolf paused beside the entrance, lifting his nose toward the narrow gap beneath the door. His ears stood perfectly erect. The relaxed expression vanished. Every muscle beneath his white coat tightened. His silver eyes became sharp. Focused. Dangerous. One after another, the remaining wolves mirrored his posture. Not frightened. Ready. The warm, peaceful cabin transformed in an instant. 6 exhausted creatures became silent sentinels. Evelyn slowly placed her empty bowl on the table. What is it? No one answered. Then, through the deafening roar of the blizzard, came another sound. Faint. Far away. The unmistakable echo of a hunting horn. The white wolf's head snapped toward the forest. A deep rumble rolled through his chest, not the growl of a beast preparing to attack, but the restrained warning of a king who had just realized his enemies had finally found him. The hunting horn sounded again. Long low. Distant enough to be swallowed by the blizzard, yet unmistakable to every creature inside the cabin. The white wolf did not move. He simply listened. Every muscle along his powerful body remained perfectly still, but the air around him seemed to tighten like a drawn bowstring. His silver eyes never left the snow-covered door. The 5 remaining wolves mirrored him without hesitation. The gray wolf silently positioned himself beneath the nearest window. The black wolf stood before the entrance. Another moved toward the rear wall, ears twitching at sounds Evelyn could not hear. It wasn't panic. It was formation. Military formation. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Who are you? The words escaped before she realized she had spoken them. No answer came. Only the crackling fire. Only the storm. only the distant echo of another horn. This one sounded closer. The white wolf slowly turned toward her. For one lingering moment, their eyes met across the warm glow of the fireplace. There was no fear in his gaze, only concern. Not for himself, for her. The realization settled strangely inside Evelyn's heart. Why would a wounded wolf worry about the lonely Omega who had opened her home? She shook the thought away. Perhaps she was imagining things again. The wind slammed against the cabin so violently that the walls creaked. Snow filtered through tiny gaps between the logs. The youngest silver wolf suddenly sneezed. It was such an unexpectedly ordinary sound that Evelyn almost laughed. Instead, she smiled. I suppose even mysterious wolves catch cold. The silver wolf tilted his head. For just an instant, he looked embarrassingly guilty. The older gray wolf nudged him lightly with one paw. Not roughly, like an older brother correcting a younger one. Evelyn stared. Her smile slowly faded. Wild wolves did not behave like this. They didn't wait for permission before eating. They didn't organize themselves into defensive positions. They certainly didn't scold one another with patient restraint. Something about these 6 creatures refused to fit any story she had ever heard. Curiosity quietly replaced fear. She fetched another kettle of water and suspended it above the fire. Soon gentle steam curled toward the ceiling. The warmth gradually spread through the cabin. One by one, droplets of melted snow slid from thick coats onto the wooden floor. As the white wolf's fur dried, Evelyn noticed faint scars hidden beneath the dense white coat. Old scars. Clean scars. The kind earned over many battles. Not accidents. A warrior's scars. She reached for another clean cloth. You've been fighting for a long time. The white wolf neither confirmed nor denied her observation. He simply lowered his head slightly, allowing her to inspect the fresh bandages. To her astonishment, the bleeding had nearly stopped. That should have been impossible. Only a few hours had passed. She carefully loosened the linen. The edges of the wound were already knitting together. Healthy flesh slowly replaced torn muscle before her very eyes. Her breath caught. No. She leaned closer. I'm certain it was worse. She remembered every injury she had cleaned. Every torn vein. Every shattered layer of flesh. Yet now, the wound looked days into recovery. She glanced toward the other wolves. The gray wolf's swollen ribs had relaxed. The younger silver wolf no longer limped. Even the black wolf's torn ear had begun closing. Healing. Far too quickly. Her grandmother's old journal suddenly returned to her memory. Hidden beneath loose floorboards rested a collection of forgotten stories passed down through generations. Stories everyone dismissed as fairy tales. One tale spoke of wolves blessed directly by the moon goddess. It claimed their bodies rejected ordinary illness. Their blood healed faster than human flesh. Their true strength awakened only beneath moonlight. Evelyn had never believed those stories. Until tonight. A sudden flash of silver illuminated the cabin. Not lightning. Moonlight. The clouds outside had briefly parted. A narrow beam slipped through the frosted window. It landed directly upon the white wolf. For one breathtaking heartbeat, silver symbols appeared beneath his skin. Not one. Dozens. Ancient lines spread across his shoulder, neck, and chest like glowing veins woven from liquid starlight. They pulsed softly beneath the white fur before fading almost immediately as the clouds swallowed the moon once more. Evelyn froze. She hadn't imagined the mark earlier. It was real. The white wolf slowly lifted his head. His expression remained calm, almost resigned, as though he understood she had seen something never meant for ordinary eyes. Neither of them moved. Neither looked away. Outside, the hunting horns fell silent. The blizzard, too, seemed strangely quieter. Then, from somewhere deep within the forest, a long, mournful wolf howl rose into the frozen night. Not a cry for prey. Not a challenge. A signal. The 6 wolves reacted instantly. Every head turned toward the darkness beyond the cabin walls. The white wolf's silver eyes narrowed. He took one deliberate step toward the door. Then another. As though he had finally made a decision. Evelyn's voice barely rose above a whisper. You're leaving. The great white wolf stopped. Without looking back, he lowered his head for a single quiet moment. A gesture that felt remarkably like gratitude. Then another sound shattered the fragile peace. Not a horn. Not a howl. A heavy boot struck the wooden porch outside. Then another. And another. Someone had followed the wolves through the storm. And whoever stood beyond that door was no longer searching. They had found them. The footsteps stopped directly outside the cabin. 1, 2. Then silence. Not the peaceful silence of falling snow. The kind that arrived just before something terrible happened. Evelyn held her breath. The fire continued to burn, its gentle crackling now painfully loud inside the tiny room. Every instinct urged her to remain still. Across the cabin, the 6 wolves had transformed completely. Gone were the exhausted creatures that had stumbled through her doorway hours earlier. Now they looked like guardians carved from stone. The black wolf stood squarely before the entrance, shoulders broad and unmoving. The gray wolf remained beneath the window, every muscle coiled beneath his thick coat. The younger silver wolf lowered himself protectively beside Evelyn's chair, placing his body between her and the door without making a sound. Only the great white wolf moved. He stepped forward until he stood directly before Evelyn. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Close enough to hear his calm, steady heartbeat despite everything unfolding around them. He looked into her eyes, then gently nudged her backward with his muzzle. Once, twice, as if asking her to stay behind him. Evelyn frowned. You want me to hide? The white wolf blinked slowly. A strange understanding passed between them. She had no idea why she obeyed. Perhaps because, for the first time in years, someone seemed determined to protect her instead of abandoning her. She quietly stepped behind the heavy oak table. The white wolf immediately turned back toward the door. Another heavy footstep echoed outside. Then came a voice. Deep. Hoarse. Barely audible through the storm. I know you're in there. Evelyn's blood froze. A man. Not a hunter shouting to announce himself. Not a traveler begging for shelter. His voice carried confidence. The confidence of someone accustomed to finding what he hunted. The white wolf's ears flattened. A deep rumble vibrated inside his chest. Outside, another voice joined the first. We tracked the blood this far. They can't have gone much farther. A third answered. The storm covered the trail. Search every cabin. Evelyn's heartbeat thundered against her ribs. There shouldn't have been anyone else living within miles of her home. Who were they searching for? Her? Or the wolves? She looked toward the white wolf. His silver eyes had narrowed into thin, focused slits. Not fear. Calculation. As though measuring every possible outcome. Suddenly, 3 sharp knocks struck the door. Boom. 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 Not a request. A command. Elder's order, the voice called. Open this door. Evelyn hesitated. If they truly came from the nearest village, refusing could make her appear guilty. Yet something about the wolves' reactions told her everything she needed to know. None of them relaxed. None moved toward the entrance. The white wolf slowly shook his head. Just once. No. She swallowed. Her voice almost failed. I don't receive visitors during storms. Silence answered. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the man laughed. Cold. Cruel. Interesting. We've been following 6 dangerous beasts. And according to the tracks, they came here. Evelyn looked instinctively toward the muddy paw prints covering her floor. The storm had hidden the trail outside. But the fresh snow on the porch. There was no hiding those prints. Another voice spoke. Break it down. Every wolf inside the cabin tensed. The white wolf took one silent step forward. His shoulder aligned perfectly with the center of the door. The others shifted almost invisibly into new positions. Not chaos. Formation. Again. Perfect formation. Evelyn suddenly understood. Whatever these wolves truly were, they had fought together countless times before tonight. Outside came the scrape of steel leaving leather. Swords. More than one. The wooden porch groaned beneath shifting weight. Whoever had found the cabin was preparing to force their way inside. Evelyn's hands trembled. Her cabin would never survive. Neither would she. Without thinking, she stepped toward the white wolf. You can't fight. She looked at his freshly bandaged shoulder. You're still wounded. The great wolf turned his head slightly. For the first time since arriving, something unexpectedly gentle softened his expression. He lightly brushed his forehead against the back of her hand. The touch lasted only a heartbeat. Warm, steady, reassuring. Then he faced the door once more. Outside, someone counted. 1. A heavy boot shifted. 2. Wood creaked beneath gathering force. The younger silver wolf released the faintest growl. The black wolf lowered himself, ready to spring. The gray wolf's amber eyes never blinked. 3. The cabin door exploded inward beneath the impact. Splintered oak flew across the room. A blast of snow and freezing wind burst inside like a living storm. Shadows filled the doorway. Steel flashed beneath torchlight. But before a single stranger could take another step, the great white wolf moved. Not with the desperation of an injured animal. Not with the fury of a cornered beast. He moved with the impossible speed, precision, and authority of someone born to command battlefields. And in that breathtaking instant, Evelyn realized she had never invited ordinary wolves into her home. The first man never crossed the threshold. He never had the chance. The great white wolf struck with breathtaking precision. One heartbeat, he stood perfectly still before the shattered doorway. The next, he became a streak of white cutting through the swirling snow. A deafening crash echoed across the clearing. The armored intruder was thrown backward as if struck by a charging horse, his sword spinning from his hand before disappearing beneath the drifting snow. The remaining men instinctively stepped back. Not because they feared wolves. Because nothing moved like that. Not even an alpha. Evelyn gasped. The white wolf landed gracefully several yards beyond the porch, placing himself between the cabin and the strangers. Snow whirled around his enormous frame. Moonlight escaped the clouds for the briefest moment, painting his white fur with an almost supernatural glow. The 5 remaining wolves poured through the broken doorway without hesitation. Not wildly. Not recklessly. Each took a different position around the white wolf with flawless discipline. A perfect defensive formation. The strangers froze. There are 6 of them. One man's voice trembled. I thought only one survived. Another lowered his torch. Impossible. The reports said the frost curse weakened them. Evelyn remained just inside the doorway, hidden behind the broken frame. The freezing wind bit into her skin, but she barely noticed. She couldn't take her eyes off the wolves. No. Not wolves. Soldiers. Everything about them screamed training. Years of discipline. Absolute trust. None moved without watching the white wolf first. None acted independently. The white wolf never once looked back. Yet somehow, every wolf understood exactly where to stand. The leader of the hunters slowly removed his fur-lined hood. He was broad-shouldered, scarred across one cheek, his gray beard covered with frost. A silver emblem shaped like a broken moon gleamed upon his armor. His lips curled into a cold smile. So, the Ghost King truly survived. Evelyn frowned. Ghost King? The white wolf remained silent. The hunter laughed softly. I'll admit, I expected you to die beneath the mountain. Instead, he glanced toward the cabin. You found yourself in Omega. His gaze settled on Evelyn. Not with curiosity. With calculation. She instinctively stepped backward. The hunter noticed. His smile widened. Interesting. So that's why you stopped running. The white wolf growled. The sound rolled across the snowy clearing like distant thunder. Every bird hidden among the frozen pines burst into flight. The hunter lifted both hands mockingly. Easy. I didn't come for the girl. I came for your head. At once, 6 swords slid from their scabbards. Steel reflected the pale moonlight. The hunters spread into a wide semicircle. They were trying to surround the wolves. The white wolf lowered his head. His silver eyes narrowed. Evelyn expected him to attack. Instead, he waited. Watching. Calculating. His patience frightened her more than violence ever could. Because it belonged to someone who had fought countless battles. The wind shifted. Snow swept sideways across the clearing. For one perfect heartbeat, visibility disappeared. Then everything exploded into motion. The black wolf lunged first. Not toward the nearest sword, toward the hunter aiming a crossbow from behind. The weapon shattered beneath powerful jaws before the bolt could be released. The gray wolf intercepted another attacker with a crushing blow of his shoulder, sending the man tumbling into deep snow. The younger silver wolf darted between two swords so quickly that neither blade found its target. They weren't fighting to kill. They were dismantling the attack. Disarming. Separating. Controlling. Exactly as trained warriors would. The white wolf still hadn't moved. He watched only one man. The leader. Their eyes remained locked across the battlefield. The hunter smiled. I wondered how long you'd pretend. With deliberate slowness, he reached beneath his cloak. Instead of drawing another weapon, he produced a crystal, no larger than a child's fist. Dark blue. Its frozen center swirled with pale silver light. The moment Evelyn saw it, an icy ache shot through her chest. The wolves reacted instantly. Every one of them stiffened. Even the white wolf took half a step backward. Fear. For the first time that night, she saw fear. Not panic. Recognition. The hunter raised the crystal high. Let's see. How much strength the frost relic left in the mighty king. King? Evelyn barely had time to process the word. The crystal erupted with blinding blue light. A wave of unbearable cold exploded across the clearing. The fire inside the cabin instantly died. Water buckets froze solid. Ice spread over the broken doorway in shimmering veins. The wolves cried out together. Not ordinary howls. Agonized cries. The white wolf staggered. His powerful legs buckled beneath him. Silver light burst violently beneath his fur, illuminating dozens of ancient runes across his entire body. This time they did not disappear. Evelyn stared in shock. Every glowing symbol connected into a single magnificent crest stretching across his shoulders and chest, not the mark of a beast, but the royal crest of someone born to rule. And for the first time since opening her door that snowy night, she understood that the wounded creature she had bandaged beside her fireplace was not merely the leader of 6 wolves. He was a king the entire world believed was already dead. The blue light refused to fade. It spread across the clearing like living frost, swallowing the warmth from everything it touched. The snow beneath the wolves turned into solid ice. The wooden porch groaned as crystals crawled across every plank. Even the air became painfully sharp to breathe. The 6 wolves trembled. Not from fear. From agony. The glowing runes beneath the white wolf's fur pulsed violently, as though struggling against the power of the frost relic. Silver light and icy blue collided across his body in waves that illuminated the storm like flashes of silent lightning. The hunter smiled. There it is. The royal seal. So the legends were true after all. He tightened his grip around the crystal. Bow to winter, Adrian. The name struck Evelyn harder than the freezing wind. Adrian. A king. Not a title whispered in stories. A real man. A real ruler. And he was suffering only a few steps away from her. The white wolf staggered again. One front leg collapsed into the snow. His breathing grew heavier. Pain radiated from him in visible waves. The other 5 wolves immediately shifted closer. Not to attack. To shield him. The black wolf planted himself directly before the wounded king. The gray wolf stood at his side. The youngest silver wolf bared his teeth, though blood dripped steadily from his mouth after resisting the relic's freezing power. None of them fled. None abandoned their king. Evelyn's chest tightened. She had seen that kind of loyalty only once before, when her grandmother had remained beside her dying husband until his final breath. True loyalty never searched for the safest place. It chose the right one. The hunter laughed. Still protecting him? What a waste. He raised the crystal higher. The frost relic was forged to break the Blood Kings. No amount of loyalty will save him. The blue light intensified. The wolves cried out again. This time the sound tore straight through Evelyn's heart. Without thinking, she ran. Straight toward them. Evelyn. No one had spoken. Yet somehow the warning echoed inside her mind. She ignored it. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she threw herself between the hunter and the kneeling white wolf. The hunter stared. The wolves froze. The storm itself seemed to hesitate. The bearded hunter frowned. "Move aside, girl." She spread both arms. "No." His expression hardened. "You don't understand who you're protecting." "I don't need to." Her voice trembled. "But I know suffering when I see it." Behind her, the white wolf tried to stand. His legs failed him again. She glanced back only briefly. His silver eyes met hers. There was confusion there. Disbelief. Almost. Concern. Why would a king worry about a forgotten Omega? The answer didn't matter. Not now. The hunter sighed. "I was willing to spare you. Don't make me regret that kindness." Evelyn looked directly into his eyes. "The only kindness I've seen tonight came from those you call monsters." Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to stop. The hunter's face darkened. "You foolish child. They're wolves." "They're people," she answered quietly. "They protected each other. They never tried to hurt me. They trusted me when they had every reason not to." She slowly knelt in the snow. Not before the hunter. Beside the white wolf. One trembling hand reached toward his wounded shoulder. His fur was colder now. Dangerously cold. She could barely feel her fingers. "You don't have to fight anymore," she whispered. "I'm here." The instant her palm rested against the glowing royal crest, something impossible happened. The silver runes stopped flickering. Instead, they answered her touch. Warmth spread beneath her hand. Not ordinary warmth. Moonlight. Pure silver light flowed from Evelyn's fingertips into the white wolf's body like gentle water finding a forgotten river. The frost relic's blue glow faltered. The hunter's confident smile vanished. "What?" "No. That's impossible." The crystal vibrated violently. Tiny cracks appeared across its frozen surface. The wolves stopped trembling. One by one, they slowly lifted their heads. The white wolf inhaled sharply. The icy chains imprisoning his strength seemed to loosen. The silver crest beneath his fur blazed brighter than ever before. Not violently. Peacefully. As if responding to something it had searched centuries to find. Evelyn stared at her own hand. Silver light still flowed through it. "I don't understand." Neither did anyone else. The hunter stumbled backward. "She can't. She's only an Omega." The gray wolf looked from Evelyn to his king. The black wolf's amber eyes widened. Even the youngest wolf seemed utterly speechless. Only the white wolf remained still. His gaze never left Evelyn. Slowly, with visible effort, he raised his head. The silver in his eyes no longer reflected pain. It reflected recognition. Not because she had saved his life. Because somewhere deep inside ancient instincts older than kingdoms, he recognized the touch he had been destined to find. Then the frost relic shattered. The crystal exploded into 1,000 fragments of blue ice that scattered across the snow like broken stars. A wave of brilliant silver light burst outward from Evelyn and the white wolf together, sweeping across the clearing with silent force. Every hunter was thrown backward. Torches were extinguished. Snow spiraled into the night sky. When the blinding light finally faded, the wolves were no longer alone. Where the great white wolf had stood, a tall man with snow-white hair knelt in the moonlit snow, his torn black cloak hanging from broad shoulders marked by glowing royal runes. And the very first thing King Adrian Blackwood saw after returning to his human form was Evelyn's frightened hand still resting gently over his heart. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Snow drifted quietly through the shattered doorway, settling upon the broken porch, the fallen hunters, and the kneeling king whose return seemed to silence even the storm itself. Evelyn could not breathe. Her hand still rested against the strong chest beneath Adrian's torn black cloak. She had expected the coarse warmth of wolf fur. Instead, beneath her trembling fingers, she felt the steady rhythm of a human heart. Strong, unyielding, alive. The glowing royal runes slowly faded from brilliant silver to a soft moonlit shimmer, tracing elegant patterns across his broad shoulders and disappearing beneath his pale skin. King Adrian Blackwood lifted his head. His snow-white hair, still damp from melting frost, fell loosely across his forehead. A small cut near his temple allowed a thin line of blood to slip down the sharp contours of his face. His silver eyes, the same eyes that had watched her from behind a wolf's gaze, were now unmistakably human. Yet nothing about them felt ordinary. They carried centuries of command. Wars survived. Promises kept. Losses endured. And now, wonder. He looked at Evelyn as though the impossible had just become real. Evelyn quickly withdrew her hand. She swallowed. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Her voice disappeared beneath the winter wind. She had touched a king. Not simply touched him. She had held him against her heart while the world watched. Adrian remained silent. He slowly rose to his full height despite the fresh wounds covering his body. He was taller than anyone Evelyn had ever seen, his powerful frame wrapped in torn black leather and a heavy cloak embroidered with faded silver thread. Though exhaustion lingered in every movement, dignity remained untouched. A king did not need a crown to be recognized. The 5 remaining wolves stepped forward. Silver light enveloped each of them, one after another. Their massive bodies dissolved into streams of moonlight. Where wolves had stood now stood 5 men dressed in battered royal armor. Every one of them bore fresh wounds. Every one of them immediately dropped onto one knee. Their fists struck their chests in perfect unison. My king, the gray-haired commander said hoarsely, "Forgive us. We failed to keep the relic away from you." Adrian's gaze never left Evelyn. "You did not fail." His voice was deep, calm, commanding without effort. "The mission is complete." The younger knight looked confused. "My king." Adrian lowered his eyes toward Evelyn for the briefest moment before speaking. "We found what destiny intended us to find." The words made no sense to Evelyn. Yet something inside her heart answered them with a quiet ache she could not explain. Across the clearing, the bearded hunter struggled to his feet. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth. His shattered frost relic lay scattered across the snow in dozens of lifeless blue fragments. He stared at Adrian with open disbelief. "It can't be. The frost curse should still bind you." Adrian finally turned. The warmth disappeared from his expression. The silver in his eyes hardened into polished steel. "You relied upon a relic. I relied upon hope." He took one slow step forward. The hunters instinctively retreated. Another step. The snow itself seemed to bend beneath an invisible pressure radiating from the king. Power. Not loud. Not violent. Simply undeniable. The bearded hunter clenched his jaw. "This isn't over. Our master will never stop hunting you." Adrian answered with complete composure. "Tell your master." His voice remained almost gentle. "That the Northern Crown remembers every debt." No threat followed. None was necessary. The hunter understood. Every man behind him understood. Without another word, they gathered their wounded and disappeared into the forest, swallowed by the storm that had once hidden them. Silence returned. Only the crackling remains of the cabin fire disturbed the night. The commander rose carefully. "My king, the castle has searched for you for 12 days. The council fears you are dead." Another knight looked toward Evelyn. Then back to Adrian. "What shall we do with?" He never finished the sentence. Adrian's expression changed instantly. The air itself grew colder. "You will address her with respect." Every knight straightened. "My apologies, your majesty." Adrian looked toward the ruined cabin. Its broken doorway hung crookedly from shattered hinges. Snow covered the wooden floor where warmth had once lived. Blankets lay scattered beside the dying fire. Everything Evelyn owned fit inside that tiny cabin. Everything she had willingly shared with 6 strangers. Adrian slowly walked toward the entrance. He noticed the neatly folded bandages. The bowl that still held traces of herbal medicine. The blankets covering the places where his companions had rested. Small things. Ordinary things. Each one whispered the same truth. She had expected nothing in return. He turned back toward Evelyn. She stood quietly in the snow, clutching her worn wool shawl around her shoulders, looking almost embarrassed by the attention now fixed upon her. The forgotten Omega. The woman no village had wanted. The woman who had opened her door when an entire kingdom would have closed theirs. Adrian descended the single broken step separating the porch from the snow. Then, before his commanders, before his royal guards, before the silent winter forest itself, the Alpha King lowered himself onto one knee before Evelyn Carter. Not as a wounded man seeking help, not as a ruler rewarding kindness, but as a king honoring the woman who had restored far more than his life. And as every knight watched their king bow before a lonely Omega, they understood that when dawn finally broke over the northern kingdom, nothing in their world would ever be the same again.